The clock on the wall of Mercy General Hospital showed 3:15 p.m. as Dr. Margaret Chen rubbed her tired eyes. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting stripes across the mountain of paperwork on her desk. Being the hospital administrator for the past 15 years had never felt as heavy as it did today. $3 million, she muttered, staring at the quote for the new MRI machine they desperately needed. Where am I supposed to find $3 million? A knock at her door broke her concentration. It was Nurse Pete, looking worried. Sorry to bother you, Dr. Chen, but we've got a situation in the East Wing. Some guy is wandering around taking pictures of everything. Security called, but I thought you might want to handle it personally. Margaret sighed and stood up. Just what she needed. Another problem. What does he look like? Tall, skinny, dark, messy hair, wearing jeans and a black t-shirt. Oh, and a bright red MAGA hat. Her eyebrows shot up. Political clothing in her hospital? That was against policy. Mercy General served everyone, regardless of background or beliefs. She had worked hard to create a neutral environment where all patients felt safe and welcome. I'll take care of it, she said, straightening her white coat. The East Wing hallway was quiet except for the soft beeping of medical equipment and hushed conversations behind closed doors. Margaret spotted him immediately, a lanky man with his back to her, taking pictures of the hospital's outdated monitoring station. Something about his profile seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. "Excuse me, sir," she called out, her voice firm but polite. "Can I help you with something?" The man turned around, phone still raised. He had an unusual face, not handsome in the traditional sense, but striking. His eyes were sharp and intelligent, taking everything in. "Just checking out the building," he said with a slight accent she couldn't place. "Interesting layout you've got here." Margaret noticed several nurses watching the interaction from the nurses' station, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. The red MAGA hat stood out starkly against the hospital's neutral blues and whites. "I'm Dr. Chen, the hospital administrator. This area is for staff only, and I need to ask what you're doing here. Are you a patient or visiting someone?" The man smiled, not a warm smile, but not unfriendly either, more calculating. "Just looking around. You've got some seriously outdated equipment here. And you're qualified to make that assessment because Margaret felt her patients wearing thin. Budget problems, staffing shortages, a broken HVAC system in pediatrics, and now this strange man criticizing her hospital. "I know a thing or two about technology," he replied, tapping his phone screen. "Well, regardless of your expertise, I need to point out two things. First, you can't be in this area without authorization. Second," she pointed to his hat, "we have a strict policy against political messaging in our facility. Patients come here from all walks of life, and we maintain a neutral environment." The man touched the brim of his hat, looking genuinely surprised, as if he'd forgotten he was wearing it. For a split second, he seemed about to argue, then something changed in his expression. "Fair enough," he said simply. "I'll have to ask you to leave," Margaret continued, gesturing toward the exit. "If you're interested in touring the hospital, you can contact our community relations office and schedule something." The man looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Margaret stood her ground. She'd faced down angry board members, difficult patients, and budget crises. One man in a political hat wasn't going to intimidate her. Finally, he nodded and walked toward the exit without another word. Margaret watched him go, an uneasy feeling settling in her stomach. Something about him seemed important, but she couldn't place why. "Dr. Chen," whispered Nurse Pete, appearing beside her. "Do you know who that was?" "Should I?" she asked, still watching as the man pushed through the exit doors. "I think," Pete said slowly, "that was Elon Musk." Margaret's blood ran cold. "That's ridiculous. Why would Elon Musk be wandering around our hospital wearing a MAGA hat?" But even as she dismissed the idea, a memory surfaced, that face on magazine covers and news stories. Could it really have been him? And if so, why was he here? Little did she know, the answer would arrive with tomorrow morning's mail, in an envelope marked "Confidential, Acquisition Notice." Margaret Chen slept poorly that night. The thought that she might have kicked Elon Musk out of the hospital kept her tossing and turning. By morning, she had convinced herself that Nurse Pete was mistaken. There was no way one of the richest men in the world would be wandering around Mercy General in a MAGA hat. She arrived at work early, her coffee mug filled to the brim. The hospital was quiet in the morning hours, the way she liked it best. As she walked toward her office, the cleaning lady, Mrs. Rivera, gave her a knowing look. "Big meeting today, huh?" Mrs. Rivera asked, leaning on her mop. Margaret stopped. "What meeting?" "The board called an emergency session. Didn't you get the email?" "Everyone's talking about it." Heart racing, Margaret rushed to her office and checked her computer. Sure enough, an urgent message from the board chairman sat in her inbox. "Emergency meeting, 9 a.m. Full board attendance. Confidential matter." "Great," she muttered, glancing at her watch. Only an hour to prepare, and she had no idea what the meeting was about. Could it be related to yesterday's visitor? At 8:55, Margaret entered the large conference room on the top floor. Nearly all the board members had arrived, their faces unusually serious. Chen and Wilson, a normally jovial older man, looked particularly grim. "Margaret," he said quietly, "there's been a development. I wanted to warn you before." The door opened, cutting him off. The man from yesterday walked in, but everything about him had changed. Gone was the casual attire and controversial hat. Today, he wore an impeccably tailored dark suit, his hair neatly combed. 3 people followed him, 2 men and a woman in equally expensive suits, carrying tablets and folders. The room fell silent. Margaret felt her throat tighten. "Good morning," the man said, his voice carrying easily across the room. "For those I haven't met yet, I'm Elon Musk." Margaret's stomach dropped. So it had been him. Their eyes met briefly, and she thought she saw the corner of his mouth twitch. Chairman Wilson stood up nervously. "Dr. Chen, board members, I'd like to formally introduce Mr. Musk, CEO of Health Innovate. As of yesterday, Health Innovate has acquired Medicorp International, our parent company." The words hit Margaret like a physical blow. Medicorp owned not just Mercy General, but 5 other hospitals in the network. And now this man, the same man she had escorted out yesterday, owned them all. "Mr. Musk has some exciting plans to share," Wilson continued, his voice strained. "This is a tremendous opportunity for Mercy General." As Musk moved to the front of the room, Margaret tried to keep her expression neutral despite the panic rising inside her. Had he recognized her yesterday? Would he mention what happened? "Thank you," Musk said, nodding to Wilson. "I'll keep this brief. Healthcare in this country is broken. Too expensive, too inefficient, too stuck in the past. Health Innovate aims to change that." He gestured, and one of his assistants handed out sleek folders to everyone at the table. "Inside, you'll find our initial assessment of Mercy General and our proposed changes. We'll be implementing new AI diagnostic systems, automated patient tracking, and state-of-the-art surgical robotics. We expect to cut costs by 30% while improving patient outcomes by 50% within 18 months. Margaret opened her folder, scanning the contents with growing alarm. The plan called for significant staff reductions, department reorganizations, and a complete overhaul of hospital procedures. Everything she had built over 15 years would be dismantled. "Any questions?" Musk asked, looking around the room. Several hands shot up, but Margaret noticed his eyes were fixed on her. She kept her hand down, mind racing to process everything. "Dr. Chen," he said, ignoring the others, "you've been remarkably quiet. As hospital administrator, I'd value your input." The room turned to look at her. Margaret took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all eyes upon her. "These are significant changes," she said carefully. "I'd need to review them in detail before commenting." Musk studied her, his expression unreadable. "Fair enough. But I should mention, I toured your facility yesterday. Unofficially. I like to see things as they really are, not just what people want me to see." The room went still. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath. "I found the experience enlightening," he finished, a slight smile playing on his lips. Margaret met his gaze steadily, though her heart hammered in her chest. Was he toying with her? Would he announce to everyone that she had kicked him out? Instead, he turned back to the group. "We'll reconvene tomorrow afternoon after you've all had time to review the plans. Thank you for your time." As the meeting broke up, Margaret gathered her things, desperate to escape to her office. But as she reached the door, Musk's voice stopped her. "Dr. Chen? A word, please." The moment she had been dreading had arrived. The conference room emptied quickly. Board members filed out, shooting curious glances at Margaret as they passed. Chairman Wilson hesitated at the door, concern written across his face, but Margaret gave him a slight nod. She could handle this herself. When the door finally closed, she was alone with Elon Musk and his 3 assistants. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Musk gestured to his team. "Give us the room, please." They gathered their tablets and papers without a word and left. Now it was just the 2 of them. Musk sat on the edge of the conference table, studying her with those intense eyes. Margaret stood her ground, chin up, though her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. "Sir," he said finally, "yesterday was interesting." Margaret took a deep breath. "Mr. Musk, about yesterday." He held up a hand, cutting her off. "You didn't know who I was." "No, I didn't," she admitted. "But that wouldn't have changed anything. Our policy about political messaging applies to everyone." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, followed by something that might have been respect. "Even the owner of the hospital." "Even the owner," she said firmly. "Patients come here from all walks of life. They're vulnerable, scared, often facing the worst days of their lives. We've worked hard to create an environment where everyone feels safe and welcome, regardless of their beliefs." Musk tapped his fingers on the table, considering her words. "Most people would be falling over themselves to apologize right now." "I'm not apologizing for doing my job," Margaret said, though her mouth had gone dry. "I will apologize if I was rude in how I approached you." To her surprise, Musk laughed. A genuine, unexpected sound that transformed his serious face. "You know what I heard most when I talked to people about buying this hospital network? That Mercy General had the best patient satisfaction scores and the most dedicated staff, despite having the oldest facilities and tightest budget. Now I see why." Margaret blinked, caught off guard by the shift in conversation. "You care about this place," he continued. "About doing things right, not just looking good on paper." "I do," she said simply. Musk stood and walked to the window, looking out over the hospital grounds. "I visited 3 other hospitals in your network this week. At each one, the administrators recognized me immediately. They showed me exactly what they wanted me to see. Gave me the VIP tour. You know what none of them did?" "What?" "None of them showed me the reality." He turned back to face her. "The outdated equipment in the East Wing. The overcrowded waiting room in the ER. The nurses using workarounds because your computer system is from the Stone Age." Margaret felt heat rise to her face. "We make do with what we have." "Making do isn't good enough in healthcare," Musk said sharply. "People's lives are at stake." "Don't you think I know that?" The words burst out before she could stop them. "Every budget cut, every delayed upgrade, every staffing shortage keeps me up at night. But unlike you, I can't just snap my fingers and make billions appear." The room went quiet again. Margaret realized she'd just snapped at possibly the wealthiest man on the planet, who also happened to be her new boss. Well, if she was getting fired anyway, might as well go down speaking the truth. To her amazement, Musk smiled. "That's exactly what I'm looking for. Someone who'll tell me the truth, not what they think I want to hear." He walked over to her and held out his hand. "I'm going to transform this hospital, Dr. Chen. I need someone who knows it inside and out, someone who cares enough to fight for it. I want you to lead the transition team." Margaret stared at his outstretched hand. "Even after I kicked you out?" "Especially after you kicked me out. You put principles above politics, above personal gain. That's rare." His expression grew serious. "I won't lie. This won't be easy. We'll be making big changes, and not everyone will keep their jobs. But the patients will get better care, and the staff who stay will have the tools they need to do their best work." Margaret thought about the crumbling infrastructure, the exhausted nurses, the patients waiting months for procedures. Could this be the solution she'd been hoping for? "What about the political messaging?" she asked. "Will that policy stay?" Musk raised an eyebrow. "You don't give up, do you?" "Not when it matters." He considered for a moment, then nodded. "The policy stays. In fact, we'll implement it across all hospitals in the network." "Fair enough." Margaret finally took his hand and shook it firmly. "Fair enough." As she left the conference room, she felt oddly lightheaded. The day had taken a turn she never could have predicted. She had no idea if working with Elon Musk would be a dream or a nightmare, but one thing was certain: Mercy General would never be the same again. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what they needed. Word spread through Mercy General like wildfire. By lunchtime, everyone from the janitors to the chief surgeons had heard about Elon Musk buying the hospital and Dr. Chen's confrontation with him the day before. The stories grew more dramatic with each retelling. In the cafeteria, Margaret overheard a young intern claim that she had physically pushed Musk out the door while calling security. "That's not exactly how it happened," Margaret said as she passed, causing the intern to choke on his sandwich. Back in her office, Margaret found Nurse Pete waiting, practically bouncing with nervous energy. "Is it true?" he asked the moment she closed the door. "Did you really tell Elon Musk you wouldn't change the political messaging policy even though he owns us now?" Margaret sighed. "News travels fast around here." "So it is true." Pete's eyes were wide. "You've got guts, Dr. Chen. Half the staff thinks you're a hero for standing up to him. The other half thinks you've lost your mind, and we're all going to lose our jobs." "Nobody's losing their jobs," Margaret said, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. "At least, not over that policy." "But there will be changes?" Pete asked, his excitement fading. Margaret nodded reluctantly. "Big ones. I'm heading up the transition team. Musk wants to modernize everything: equipment, procedures, staffing structure. It won't be easy." Pete slumped into a chair. "I knew it. They'd always start by bringing in fancy tech, then decide they don't need as many nurses." "I'll fight for every position we truly need," Margaret promised. "But I can't deny we need better equipment. You know how many workarounds you all do every day because of outdated systems." "True," Pete admitted. "Last week, the cardiac monitor in room 302 went down again during a patient crisis. Dr. Kumar had to make treatment decisions blind for almost 10 minutes. Margaret winced. She'd written desperate grant applications for new monitoring equipment for 3 years straight, all denied. Her phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Ready to see what's possible? Meet me at the east entrance, EM." "I have to go," she told Pete. "Tell the department heads I need reports on their most critical equipment needs by tomorrow morning." Outside, a sleek black car waited at the east entrance. The driver opened the door as Margaret approached, revealing Elon Musk in the back seat, focused on his phone. "Get in," he said without looking up. "I want to show you something." Hesitantly, Margaret slid into the leather seat. The car pulled away before she could even close the door properly. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Health Innovate headquarters." Musk finally looked up from his phone. "It's 30 minutes away. I had it built last year specifically for this project." "You've been planning to buy our hospital network for over a year." "I've been planning to revolutionize healthcare for over a decade," he corrected. "Your network is just the beginning." The drive was mostly silent. Margaret stared out the window, watching the familiar city landscape give way to newer, more modern buildings. Finally, they'd pulled up to a gleaming glass structure with a minimalist logo over the entrance. Inside, the building hummed with activity. Young people in casual clothes moved purposefully through open workspaces. Large screens displayed data visualizations and 3D models of medical equipment. It looked more like a tech startup than anything related to healthcare. "This way," Musk said, leading her to an elevator. He pressed his palm against a scanner, and the doors opened. "R&D is in the basement levels. Most of what we're working on isn't public yet." The elevator descended smoothly. When the doors opened, Margaret gasped. The underground space was enormous, filled with labs, testing areas, and prototype equipment. People in white coats moved between stations, some working with robotic components, others studying holographic displays. "Welcome to the future of medicine," Musk said, a rare note of genuine enthusiasm in his voice. He led her through the facility, explaining each innovation: surgical robots with unprecedented precision, diagnostic systems that could detect diseases from breath samples, that could predict patient deterioration hours before human doctors noticed symptoms. "And this," he said, stopping before a large device that looked like a sleeker, smaller version of an MRI machine, "is going to replace your outdated imaging department. It does everything your current machines do, plus tissue analysis, blood flow measurement, and neural activity mapping, all in one scan, at 1/10 the radiation exposure. Margaret stared at the machine. The cost? About $7 million per unit. She laughed bitterly. We've been begging for a $3 million replacement MRI for years. There's no way we could afford this. You don't have to afford it, Musk said simply. I'm not selling these to you. I'm installing them. The entire hospital is getting upgraded. Margaret felt dizzy. Why? I mean, yes, we need better equipment, but this level of investment, the return can't possibly justify. This isn't about financial return, Musk interrupted. At least, not directly. It's about proving what's possible. Once we show that these technologies improve outcomes and reduce long-term costs, every hospital will want them. That's when we scale. As they walked back toward the elevator, Margaret's mind raced. The innovations she'd seen could transform patient care at Mercy General. But at what cost to the human element of healthcare? These machines are impressive, she said carefully. But healthcare isn't just about technology. It's about people caring for people. Musk stopped walking. That's exactly why I need you, Dr. Chen. I know how to build machines. You know how to build a culture of care. Together, we might actually fix this broken system. For the first time since meeting Elon Musk, Margaret felt a flicker of genuine hope. Maybe, just maybe, this unexpected partnership could work after all. The next morning, Margaret arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. Sleep had been impossible after what she'd seen at Health Innovate. Her mind kept racing with possibilities and concerns. To her surprise, a small group had gathered outside her office. Dr. Rodriguez, the head of surgery, stood at the front with his arms crossed. Beside him were Dr. Patel from cardiology, Nurse Ding from the ICU, and several others, all senior staff with decades of experience. We need to talk, Dr. Rodriguez said, his usually friendly face serious. About Musk and what's happening to our hospital. Margaret unlocked her office door. Come in, all of you. They filed in, some taking seats, others leaning against the walls. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a scalpel. I understand you have concerns, Margaret began. Concerns? Dr. Patel interrupted. Margaret, there are rumors flying everywhere. People say half the staff will be replaced by robots. That Musk is turning us into some kind of experimental tech playground. That you've either sold us out or lost your mind. Margaret winced. None of that is true. Then what is true? Nurse Diane asked. We deserve to know. Many of us have given our whole careers to this place. Margaret took a deep breath. These people were more than colleagues. They were friends who had fought alongside her through budget crises, pandemic surges, and countless late nights caring for patients no one else would take. The truth is, yes, big changes are coming. Musk is investing millions in new equipment and systems. She held up her hand as murmurs broke out. But I've made it clear that any changes must improve patient care, not just efficiency metrics. Dr. Rodriguez shook his head. You've seen how these tech takeovers go. They promise innovation but deliver staff cuts and algorithmic medicine. Patients become data points. That's why I agreed to lead the transition, Margaret said firmly, to make sure that doesn't happen. And if it does? Dr. Patel asked quietly. What then? The question hung in the air. Margaret had asked herself the same thing 100 times since yesterday. Then I'll walk away, she said finally, and I imagine many of you will too. But before we get to that point, I'm asking you to trust me, to work with me, to try to shake this change into something good for our patients and our community. She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a stack of notebooks. I need each department to form a team, experienced staff paired with your youngest, most tech-savvy people. Document everything you do that can't be measured easily. The comfort you provide. The subtle signs you catch because you know your patients. The workarounds you've developed over years. Everything. What good will that do? Someone asked from the back. It'll give us leverage, Margaret explained. Musk understands technology, but we understand care. Together, maybe we can create something better than either alone. Slowly, reluctantly, heads began to nod. Not everyone looked convinced, but it was a start. After they left, Margaret slumped in her chair, emotionally drained. Her phone buzzed with a text, Conference Room 3. Now, brought my engineers. Time to get started. EM. No please, no is this a good time? Just a command. Margaret sighed. Working with Elon Musk was going to test her patience in ways she hadn't imagined. When she entered conference room 3, she stopped short. The space had been transformed overnight. The old table was gone, replaced by modular furniture. The walls were covered with digital screens showing hospital floor plans, equipment specifications, and staff schedules. About a dozen people she'd never seen before were busy setting up laptops and holographic displays. Musk stood in the center, talking rapidly to a young woman taking notes on a tablet. "Ah, Dr. Chen," he said, noticing her. "Meet your transition team." Margaret looked around at the unfamiliar faces. "Where are my people?" "The department heads I need to include." "These are the best medical technology experts in the country," Musk replied dismissively. "They've done hospital transformations before." "At hospitals like Mercy General?" Margaret asked. "With our patient population, our budget constraints, our unique challenges?" Musk frowned. "The point is to fix those problems, not work around them." "You can't fix what you don't understand," Margaret said, keeping her voice level. "And they don't understand this hospital or our patients." The room had gone quiet, everyone watching their exchange. "What do you suggest?" Musk asked, a hint of irritation in his voice. "A balanced team. Your tech experts paired with our medical experts. Equal numbers, equal input. That will slow everything down." "Yes," Margaret agreed. "And it will prevent expensive mistakes. You wanted me to tell you when you're wrong, remember? You're wrong about this." For a tense moment, she thought she'd pushed too far. Musk's expression was unreadable as he studied her. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth twitched. "Fine," he said. "Get your people in here. But the timeline doesn't change. We're still launching the first phase of upgrades in 6 weeks." Margaret nodded, relief washing over her. It was a small victory, but an important one. As she turned to leave, Musk called after her. "Dr. Chen." "Yes." His expression had softened slightly. "That's twice now you've stood your ground when it mattered. Not many people do that with me." "Get used to it," she replied with a small smile. "This is just the beginning." As Margaret headed to gather her team, she realized something had changed. For the first time since this whirlwind began, she wasn't just reacting to Musk's plans, she was helping to shape them. Maybe, just maybe, they could make this work after all. 3 months into the hospital transformation, Margaret stood in the newly renovated emergency department, watching with a mixture of pride and anxiety as the staff worked with the new systems. The space was nearly unrecognizable. Gone were the dingy walls and flickering lights, replaced by soothing colors and natural light from cleverly placed skylights. The cramped nurses' station had transformed into an open workspace with curved monitors displaying patient data in real time. "How's it going?" Nurse Pete asked, joining her with 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Margaret, who accepted it gratefully. "Better than I expected, honestly," she admitted. "Yesterday we saw a record number of patients, but the average wait time was down by nearly an hour." Pete nodded. "The new triage system is amazing. That little scanner thing can detect internal bleeding and fractures before the patient even sees a doctor." They watched as an elderly man was brought in by ambulance. Within seconds, the patient was scanned, vital signs appeared on the overhead displays, and the system automatically assigned him to a treatment area based on urgency and required resources. "It's like something from a sci-fi movie," Pete marveled. Margaret smiled. "That's what Dr. Rodriguez said too, right before he admitted the surgical robot did a better appendectomy than he could." "Never thought I'd see the day," Pete laughed. He was so opposed to all this at first. Margaret's phone buzzed. Another text from Musk. "Monthly data review. My office. 30 minutes." She sighed. These data reviews had become a regular part of her life, and while the results were impressive, the meetings themselves were exhausting. Musk questioned everything, challenged every explanation, and constantly pushed for faster implementation. His temporary office was on the top floor, formerly a storage area, now a sleek space with glass walls and a view of the city. When Margaret arrived, Musk was staring at a large screen covered with graphs and charts, his back to the door. "We have a problem," he said without turning around. Margaret's stomach tightened. What kind of problem? Patient satisfaction scores are down in the oncology department. He pointed to a downward trending line on the screen. Margaret moved closer to examine the data. That's strange. The new treatment protocols are showing better outcomes. Better medical outcomes don't always mean happier patients, Musk said. Find out what's happening. Margaret bit back a retort about his demanding tone. Over the months, she'd learned to pick her battles with him. I'll talk to Dr. Patel today. Musk finally turned to face her. She was surprised to see dark circles under his eyes. He looked as tired as she felt. The board meeting is next week, he said. They'll want to see results from the first phase before approving funding for the next. I thought you were funding this personally. Parts of it. But for this to work long-term, the hospital needs to become self-sustaining with the new systems. He ran a hand through his hair. If we can't show improved efficiency and patient outcomes, the whole model falls apart. For the first time, Margaret saw genuine worry on his face. This wasn't just another business venture to him. He actually cared whether this worked. I'll figure out what's happening in oncology, she promised. Later that afternoon, Margaret sat in the oncology waiting room, observing. The space had been beautifully renovated, with comfortable seating and calming artwork, yet something felt off. She watched as patients checked in at the automated kiosk, then sat waiting for their names to be called by the electronic system. When Dr. Patel passed by, Margaret waved her over. Got a minute? For you? Always. Dr. Patel sat beside her. What brings you to my department? Patient satisfaction scores are down. I'm trying to figure out why. Dr. Patel nodded slowly. I've been worried about that too. The medical care is better than ever. The new targeted therapy machines are a miracle. But something's missing. As they talked, an elderly woman approached the check-in kiosk. She stared at the screen, confusion evident on her face. After several failed attempts to enter her information, she turned away, looking lost and frustrated. Without a word, Dr. Patel rose and went to the woman. Mrs. Wilson, so good to see you today. Let me help you with that check-in. Margaret watched as Dr. Patel gently guided the woman through the process, asking about her grandchildren and commenting on her pretty scarf. The transformation in Mrs. Wilson was immediate, from frustrated to relieved, even smiling as she took her seat. That's it, Margaret said when Dr. Patel returned. That's what's missing. Human connection, Dr. Patel agreed. Before, Linda at the front desk knew everyone by name. She remembered their stories, their families. The system is more efficient, but it's cold. Margaret thought for a moment. What if we had a patient liaison? Someone whose only job is to help people navigate the new systems and make them feel welcome. That might work, Dr. Patel said thoughtfully, especially for our older patients who aren't comfortable with technology. The next day, Margaret presented her findings to Musk, along with her proposal for patient liaisons in each department. So do you want to add staff? He asked, frowning. The whole point of the automated systems was to reduce personnel costs. No, Margaret corrected. The point was to improve patient care. Sometimes that means more technology. Sometimes it means a friendly face to hold someone's hand during the scariest time of their life. Musk started to argue, then stopped, studying her with those intense eyes. You really believe this will make a difference? I know it will. Let me prove it. Give me 1 month with a liaison in oncology. If satisfaction scores don't improve, we'll try something else. After a long moment, Musk nodded. 1 month. But if this works, I want to understand exactly why. There might be a technological solution we haven't considered. Margaret smiled. Not everything can be solved with technology, Mr. Musk. Maybe not, he conceded with the ghost of a smile. But I've been wrong before. As Margaret left his office, she felt a sense of accomplishment. Slowly but surely, they were finding the right balance between innovation and compassion, between efficiency and humanity. The hospital was changing, but its heart remained the same. 1 year to the day after Margaret had escorted Elon Musk out of Mercy General Hospital, she stood beside him on a small stage in the hospital's main lobby. The space was packed with staff, patients, local officials, and press. Behind them hung a large cloth covering what everyone had gathered to see. Margaret glanced at Musk, still finding it strange to see him in a formal suit. He looked as uncomfortable as she felt in the spotlight. "You should do the honors," he said quietly. "This was your vision as much as mine." Chairman Wilson stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, 1 year ago, Mercy General faced an uncertain future. Our equipment was outdated, our budget was stretched thin, and our staff was overworked. Today, we stand in a facility that has been completely transformed." He gestured to Margaret and Musk. Through this unique partnership between technological innovation and compassionate care, Mercy General, now Health Innovate Medical Center, has become a model for hospitals across the country. The crowd applauded politely. Margaret spotted familiar faces, Dr. Rodriguez beaming proudly, Nurse Pete giving her a thumbs up, Dr. Patel with tears in her eyes. In the past year, Wilson continued, patient outcomes have improved by 47%. Wait times have decreased by 68%, and most remarkably, patient satisfaction scores are the highest they've ever been in our hospital's history. This time the applause was more enthusiastic. Margaret knew those numbers represented countless lives improved, pain relieved, and families comforted. I'll now turn the microphone over to the two people who made this possible. Our hospital administrator, Dr. Margaret Chen, and the founder of Health Innovate, Mr. Elon Musk. Margaret stepped forward, heart pounding. Public speaking had never been her strength, but today's words mattered too much to delegate. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "This transformation didn't happen because of me or Mr. Musk. It happened because of every person in this room and hundreds more who couldn't be here today. Every doctor who learned new systems while maintaining their commitment to patients. Every nurse who adapted to new technology while keeping their compassionate touch. Every staff member who embraced change while holding on to our core values." She paused, making eye contact with as many familiar faces as she could. When Mr. Musk first bought this hospital, many of us feared that technology would replace the human element of healthcare. What we discovered instead was that the right technology can enhance humanity, giving our staff more time to actually sit with patients, to hold hands, to listen, to comfort. Musk stepped forward to stand beside her. For once, he didn't interrupt or take over. Our patient liaison program, which started as a small experiment in oncology, is now being implemented in hospitals across the country. Our hybrid surgery model, where AI assists human surgeons rather than replacing them, has reduced complications by 60%, and our community health prediction system has helped us reach vulnerable patients before they even know they need care. Margaret turned to look at Musk. None of this would have been possible without Mr. Musk's vision and investment. He could have bulldozed over our concerns and forced changes from the top down. Instead, he listened. He adapted. He learned that healthcare is ultimately about people caring for other people, even when amazing technology is involved. Musk looked genuinely embarrassed by the praise. He cleared his throat and leaned toward the microphone. "When I first visited this hospital," he said, "I was looking at it as a technical problem to solve. Outdated equipment, inefficient processes, data that wasn't being utilized." He glanced at Margaret. "What I didn't account for was the human element, and I certainly didn't expect to be kicked out for wearing the wrong hat." Laughter rippled through the crowd. The story of their first meeting had become hospital legend. "That moment taught me something important," Musk continued, unusually reflective. "That principles matter. That sometimes the person willing to tell you no is exactly the person you need on your team." He looked at Margaret with genuine respect. Dr. Chen stood her ground that day not because of politics, but because she cared about creating a welcoming environment for every patient. That same commitment to doing what's right has guided this entire project.